Welcome everyone to this recording of the Diamond District meeting that was given on June 8th at the Bon Secours Training Center. This is a repeat of the presentation that was given at that meeting. My name is Maritza Mercado Peachin, and I am the Deputy Director for Equitable Development with the City of Richmond. I'm also in charge of the Diamond District project. I'm the project manager coordinating all the pieces for the Diamond District redevelopment project. Today, the presentation will include a site overview, some of the milestones we hit before we issued the solicitation, and an overview on public-private partnerships. And then we'll conclude with a way for you to submit your questions and answers as it relates to this project. So this is the Diamond District outlined in red. It is at the intersection of the overlap of 95 and 64. 95 is the east-west, the north-south rather, highway connecting the eastern seaboard, and 64 connects Virginia Beach over to West Virginia, and they overlap for 6 miles through downtown Richmond. The Diamond District is located at these interstates, as well as at the intersection of Ash Boulevard and Hermitage Road, two major streets in the city of Richmond. As you can see from this picture, it's not far from downtown and growing and strong neighborhoods of Scott's Addition, the North Side, and the Fan. The site is shown here outlined in red. This is the site that we're referring to as the Diamond District. It's the home of the current Flying Squirrels Diamond Baseball Park. So that's part of the reason why it's called the Diamond District. And then also it has a somewhat of a diamond shape if you look at the red outline. Property A is Parker Field. Property B is the Arthur Ashe Athletic Center. C is the Diamond District. D is surface parking that supports it. E and G are fields that once housed city functions that have been relocated, and the sites have been remediated, and these are just now grassy areas. And then F is owned by VCU, Virginia Commonwealth University, and that's the Sportsbackers Stadium. So all of the property is about 67 acres, and F, all of it's owned by the city except for F, which is VCU's property, which is about a little over 6 acres. So when we refer to the Diamond District, it's this area that's shown in red. Most people don't understand what 67 acres looks like, how large that space is. And so here, the filled-in polygon is the Diamond District that I just showed. And then the outlines is the same shape, just kind of showing you how large it is compared to other areas. For instance, Scott's Addition. This is the Bon Secours Training Center with those 2 football fields. So you can see how large an athletic field takes up within that 67 acres. The western edge of Carytown, part of the Fan, and then the VCU Monroe Park campus. So 67.5 square acres. Acres is a good amount of property where a lot can happen. Before we even released the RFI, which kicked off this process, the request for interest, which kicked off the process to seek a developer to help the city redevelop this property. The city has been working for many years on preparing this site for redevelopment. So even before 2018, the city had relocated those functions that I mentioned before, cleared that property, those parcels that have grass on them now, and prepared them for redevelopment. In 2019 and 2020, the city developed the Richmond 300 master plan, and as part of that process, dedicated a significant amount of time just focusing on what we dubbed then the greater Scott's Addition area, which encompasses more than just the Diamond District, and I'll go into more detail on what that includes. We had 4 community meetings, over 1,300 surveys, comments on the draft plan, and then that plan was included as part of the Richmond 300 plan when it was adopted in December 2020. That paved the way. That Greater Scott's Addition small area plan included recommendations to rezone the property and develop a solicitation to seek a developer to help the city redevelop the site. The rezoning was completed in July 2021, and then in the summer of 2021, we were preparing, and fall, we were preparing for the launch of the solicitation process. So in October and through December of 2021, we launched the rvadiamond.com site, which is a separate marketing site for the property, and then as well as a sub page on the city's website as well. And we started marketing the opportunity to prospective developers. So I'm going to go into detail more on these different steps that we took with the pre-solicitation milestones. So the small area plan is shown here. So when we talk about Greater Scott's Addition, we really are talking about a very large area that includes the Sowers properties over where Whole Foods is at Hermitage, up through the area where Hardywood is, the kind of industrial area that's changing to have residential now, up around with the highway being a boundary, all the way, as you follow my cursor, you can see to the edge of the western edge of Scott's Addition, and then Broad Street as the boundary. So all of that area is what we have been referring to as Greater Scott's Addition. With the Diamond District, the 67 acres is the red outline here. So this image that you see here is the small area plan kind of vision plan for that whole area, the framework that features a great green space and neighborhood parks and kind of these different districts throughout. So those districts are described in the plan. There's so the Diamond site here is shown in red. That's the 67.5 square acres. The rest of it is what we called Greater Scott's Addition overall. So Area A is a district that was described in the adopted plan as a gateway district. So that would be a regional destination for offices, shopping, and entertainment with landmark architecture. And Area B is what was dubbed the ballpark and entertainment district. And that was a lively community integrated with entertainment and a new sports venue. One thing that I'll note is that the ballpark is shown along Hermitage in this conceptual framework plan. But all of the submissions that we are kind of looking at for the Diamond, we've asked them to put the ballpark at this corner where my mouse is of Ash and the railroad track. And the reason for that is that's the best site that is available for development right now. We have to keep sports backers up for a certain period of time before, like, we need to start the construction of the ballpark. And so we want to start that as soon as possible on the available land. And that ballpark, the current Diamond cannot come down until after the new ballpark is built. So there's some just moving around of pieces to make sure that everything can happen the way we want it to. And so the phasing kind of has pushed that ballpark over to the Ash side. The small area plan also kind of outlined vision statements for the other districts in the Greater Scott's Addition area, and you can find those in the Richmond 300 master plan in more detail. It also outlined a vision for open space as a framing, a way to frame and create place in this new part of our city, a new neighborhood of our city. And so relevant to the Diamond District, again, which is shown in red, are these two, these area, which is what we called kind of a northern crescent park, an urban public space with passive lawns and relaxing atmosphere, integrated with green infrastructure to support water quality, different features to activate those spaces as well. And then the little number one speaks to a ballpark and plaza, kind of a vibrant outdoor space that's activated by the baseball stadium. So the idea that there's a space in front of or near the ballpark where kind of people who are visiting the ballpark can activate the public realm in that area. So the small area plan included some images for what the transformation could look like. So you'll notice on, so this is Ash and this is the current Diamond site. and the vision was to create an urban neighborhood along North Arthur Ashe Boulevard. And that urban density, that mixed use, the multimodal becomes possible because of that green space that's right behind it, that is envisioned, that Crescent Park. And so this is that site today. This is inside of the diamond looking south, and you can see the dome of the Science Museum off in the distance. And this is those green fields that I mentioned before at the southern edge of the site. And so the idea is that a potential future for the central part of the site could be a grand public space with buildings fronting it, with pedestrian and bike infrastructure, and with different ways for people to experience that space, creating kind of an oasis to enjoy nature, gather, and to relax. This Crescent Park was envisioned as a signature element that anchors a series of green spaces that connect to the new ballpark, residential areas, and employment. The small area plan also included this potential street section diagram, and that shows that streets are for everyone and designed to be operated to enable safe access for all users, including pedestrians, bicyclists, motorists, and transit riders, while also incorporating stormwater infrastructure. So you can see in this image that there's the buildings look down on the space, there's openings, doors, windows that look to the public spaces, so that anyone who's walking on the sidewalk or spending time in any park space feels like they are safe because people inside the buildings can see them, and they're not kind of isolated in an urban space. And then you can see how the stormwater could potentially filter into a system underneath the ground. So the small area plan outlined priority next steps, and those are listed here. Just a couple to remark on is the rezoning, which has been completed, the issuing the solicitation to redevelop the property, and that's what we're in the middle of right now. And then a lot of the other goals relate to the components and the things that we want to see in this part of town, including a street grid to break up super blocks, making and honoring these great streets, making them, which would be Ashe and Hermitage, making them feel like important streets in our city, building new bridges where needed, marketing this place as a great place, incorporating low-income housing, green infrastructure, and parks. These priority next steps are reflected in the goals that the request for interest outlined, which I'll be going over next. So another step we took to prepare for the solicitation was rezoning, and on the left you can see what the zoning was prior to July 2021. It was predominantly industrial, M1 and M2. Those are the terms. Those are the abbreviations in the zoning ordinance for light industrial and heavy industrial. So most of the area was industrial, with a couple pockets where you see TOD1 and B5 allowing mixed use residential development, and those were rezoned by the property owners. And then where you see the dots, that's where there were special use permits. Several of them were to allow residential uses to occur in the industrial space, because residential is not permitted by right use in an industrial zoning district. So we rezoned the property in July to TOD1, July 2021, TOD1 and B7 as shown on the right of the screen. And the TOD1 allows for up to 12 stories, residential mixed use, office, kind of any kind of typical like city urban uses. And it also has requirements for form-based elements to make sure that the buildings address the street and have elements that support walking and biking and kind of street level pedestrian activity. The B7 category is what most of Scott's Addition is zoned, and B7 is a district that allows light industrial uses to continue and to expand, but it also allows residential within that same district. Then we did the marketing, like I said, the RVA Diamond website to the left, and then the subpage on the city's economic development site to the right. The solicitation process is a three-step process. There's three acronyms: RFI, RFAI, and RFO. We started in December by issuing a request for interest, where we asked respondents to provide their qualifications and their vision for the diamond. We got 15 responses, which is a really robust, excellent response rate for something like this. We received those February 15th. The evaluation panel reviewed them. I'll be talking about who's on the evaluation panel on the next slide. And they invited 6 respondents to respond to an RFAI. That's a request for additional information. That invite went out on March 23rd rather, of 2022. And the RFAI asked the respondents to provide much more detail on their proposal for the site. So the RFAI they're mainly focused on their qualifications, and the RFAI was more weighted towards the actual their vision and their proposal for the 67.5 square acres. On May 10th, the evaluation panel announced that they had invited 3 RFAI respondents to respond to the RFO. So those are the finalists. Those 3 finalists were issued the RFO on June 3rd, and it is due June 28th. We anticipate selecting and announcing a preferred team in July to round out this process, and then we'll get started on the development. So the evaluation panel that I mentioned before includes members of city staff and elected officials and VCU who are experts in their individual fields. So we have Jim Duval, who is the city's debt manager, Sharon Ebert, who is the Deputy Chief Administrative Officer for Planning and Economic Development, Carol Kane Gray, who's the CFO for VCU, and Catherine Jordan and Anne Francis Lambert, who are the council members for the 2nd and 3rd districts, which are the 67.5 acres are fully within the 2nd district and very close to the 3rd district. We have Lincoln Saunders, who's the CAO for the city, Leonard Sledge, the Director of Economic Development, Capricia Smith-Spellman, who's the Director of Office and Community Wealth Building, Bob Steidel, the DCAO for Infrastructure for the city, and Stephen Willoughby, who's the Director of Emergency Communications. As I said earlier, I'm the facilitator project manager for the whole project. And then we have a couple of advisors from city staff, Lynn Lancaster and Matt Welch. And then we have external advisors, Davenport, who is the city's financial advisor, AECOM, who's done some infrastructure market analysis and ballpark analysis for us. And then I will have outside legal counsel to assist as well. So that request for interest is really important. This was due on February 15th, and it outlined project goals and evaluation criteria. I'm going to spend some time going over these because the project goals and evaluation criteria have stayed the same through all 3 steps. So the RFI, RFAI, and RFO all refer to the same project goals and the same evaluation criteria. So the first project goal relates to infrastructure. So we set we want a goal for the project is to upgrade all the water, stormwater, and road infrastructure to support the development. And right now, as you guys saw, it's a huge super block, and the plan, the vision for the area looks at putting in new streets, putting in buildings, and so all the necessary infrastructure that would need to support that is something that we would want to see upgraded as a part of the project. Baseball stadium. So we need to deliver a new baseball stadium built to the new Major League Baseball standards for minor league baseball stadiums. So for folks who are not totally aware of everything that's been happening in Major League Baseball, we have the up until recently, minor leagues kind of operated independently from Major League Baseball. Major League Baseball recently took them all under their wing, and in doing so, they actually cut a bunch of teams, and thankfully, the Flying Squirrels were not one of them. And in the process, they also they created these standards for minor league baseball stadiums. And they set a deadline for all minor league teams to meet the new standards by opening day 2025. So that would be April 2025. The current diamond that you see in this picture does not meet the minor league baseball stadium standards. It is an obsolete building, and it's physically impossible to meet the minor league baseball stadium standards within this building. So we need a new ballpark. Folks can look up directly what all the minor league requirements are, but just for example, some of them relate to appropriate amount of space in locker rooms for the home team and the visiting team, office space and training and like PT space and things like that for female staff. Something's been happening in minor league baseball where more women are now involved in the running of the baseball team. And in a lot of the old stadiums, they don't have locker room or office or separate spaces for them. So those are just a taste of some of the things that Major League is looking for all the minor league ballparks to have. One of the appendices to the RFI available on our website includes a summary of kind of the ballparks that have been built in the last 10 years across the country, how they were financed, how large they were, and the impact that those minor league baseball stadiums had on kind of development around them, and kind of how much development they spun off after they were built. Another goal is to enable the city, VCU, VUU, and sports backers to relocate the sports backers stadium functions and redevelop that site as part of the Diamond District redevelopment. So that's Site F. Those functions would are moving to the VCU Athletic Village. And so we will be working on that as part of the redevelopment of this site. Another goal is to redevelop the Arthur Ashe Junior Athletic Center site and assist the city in relocating the functions there and redevelop that as a whole new, demolish the building and redevelop it as part of the whole new redevelopment of the city, of this part of the city. The small area plan that I went over before shows this corner as being redeveloped. It's an important gateway to the city. We want this project to include a significant number of new housing units. This can be a whole new neighborhood where thousands of people live. There could be a significant amount of housing. Remember, 67.5 square miles. When I superimpose that on other parts of the city, kind of shows how big this space is. And so one of the goals of the RFI stated, various housing types, including units affordable to housing households as low as 30% of the area median income, and then for sale units for folks with incomes as low as 70% of the area median income. Something that we added in the RFAI and provided more detail on in the RFO is that the city has a goal to include 100 project-based voucher units within the Diamond District, with a target of at least 40% of those set aside for replacement relocation units for Gilpin Court residents. So for folks who are not totally familiar with what that means, a project-based voucher is issued by Richmond Redevelopment Housing Authority to a building, and it's basically like says that that building can accept people who have vouchers that RHA issues. And so basically it means that someone who's on has a very low income can have a right has a spot in that building to live. And so we want this to be an equitable development where there's opportunity for people at various levels of the income spectrum to live, to work, and to play. And so the residential component is just one part of fulfilling that vision. The RFI also sets out goals for office, hotel, and retail. This can be a very mixed use kind of entertainment destination. This could be a very good site for office, being close to the ballpark and also next to the highways, and growing and strong residential communities. The RFI sets out goals about creating a multimodal destination, making sure that parking is shared instead of kind of everyone building their own parking lot or parking garage rather, and having it be empty most of the time, thinking about how how to make sure that those buildings are and the parking spots are used as much as possible. That way we're not dedicating lots of land to parking vehicles. Transit, we want to support the growth and frequency of GRTC to this site. And then we want to make sure that we're prioritizing walking and biking throughout the area by having amenities and features that encourage people to walk, like street trees, ample sidewalks, buildings that have windows and doors that you can look into so you don't feel like you're alone in the city, and then also bike infrastructure to support cyclists. We have recommendations about public open space, providing that great public open space that can also help manage stormwater and reduce the heat island effect. We also want to have a phasing strategy that includes that ballpark coming in on the first day, coming in phase 1 and opening by 2025 opening day. And we need that first phase of development to be significant, be a many cranes in the air, many buildings going up to create an awesome kind of district right off the bat when the ballpark opens, but also to create enough revenue to support the bond financing that will make the ballpark and infrastructure possible. And I'll go into a little bit more detail on what that means later. So another one of the development component goals relates to making sure that this is quality design. This is going to be a whole new place with a whole new image. And we want to make sure that we have spectacular architecture and urban design standards. We also want the buildings to be sustainable in and of themselves. These are new buildings that can take advantage of new technologies to reduce energy consumption and then potentially even produce their own energy on site with renewables. We have some goals related to community. And so we want this to be a whole new neighborhood that has its own place, it's unique, that it is its own, a whole new destination within the city. We want this to be a place that has features and destinations for families and children, which could include parks, playgrounds, daycare facilities, recreation, and the like. We'd like this place to be connected to the other neighborhoods around it. And so that means they can be connected through streets, through shared use paths, a good connected sidewalk system, and so that this place doesn't become an island, but it is kind of a place that anyone from other neighborhoods can easily get to by walking, biking, or car. And we want folks to think about this as a whole sustainable district with 67.5 acres that are all connected to each other. You can do some pretty innovative things related to stormwater, related to energy on a site-wide scale. Other community goals relate to continuing to honor Arthur Ashe Jr.'s athletic legacy. As I mentioned before, the Arthur Ashe Jr. athletic facility is proposed to be demolished, but we want to make sure we continue to honor his legacy throughout the site. We want to make sure that there's meaningful employment, that people are paid at least the minimum wage or the prevailing wage, whichever is greater, and that we use union employees for a portion of the construction activities. Other community goals relate to making sure that the development program includes a diverse and inclusive development team, and that relates to the equity that the development team is bringing and also ownership of the team. And that MBE, so minority business enterprises and emerging small businesses, have opportunities at every stage of the project. So in development, design, financing, construction management, ownership, equity, and construction, and that contractors and vendors have opportunities to help with the operation of buildings and as tenants in office and retail spaces. So now talking about the fiscal goals, we have a goal that we want to create significant new revenues for the city. So that's real estate tax, the B-poll tax, sales, lodging, meals, and admissions tax. We want to make sure that the project utilizes a financing approach that minimizes public investment and risk and maximizes private investment. So that means we're looking for the three finalist teams to think creatively about what they're bringing to the table and how to minimize the city's risk. We are assuming that any kind of debt that might be issued would be non-recourse to the city. That means that the city would not be liable for paying that in the event of kind of unforeseen circumstances. We've asked developers to think about creating a community fund that could help fund technical assistance and training for MBE and in ESBs and offset prices, and could also fund post-secondary scholarships for RPS students. So those are all of the goals, which is a lot of goals, and all of those came from either the small area plan or past deals that the city's Department of Economic Development has negotiated for the city. And kind of understanding the priorities of the city as established in the equity agenda and other resolutions and papers that council has passed. So the way that we're going to be looking at the submissions and the way that we have been looking at the submissions are these 4 areas of evaluation. So one of them is the development team. So we want to have a qualified and capable development team, and that's expressed in their years and breadth of development history, the scope of services that they have provided, their financial capability to do the work, and the strength of their references and the diversity of their team and ownership structure. We want a team that has experience with urban mixed-use projects, so completing sports, entertainment, redevelopment projects, office, mixed income residential, hotel, retail components, and then past experience building minor league baseball stadiums. We want a team who has experience kind of overcoming barriers to site redevelopment. There's always things that come up, and we want a team who has experience kind of navigating the different barriers that emerge, who understands how to use public open space to redevelop a site, who understands how to reconcile their needs with the municipality's desires, their ability to deliver projects on time and on budget, and their experience with public-private financing. We're looking for a private partner to help us, the public sector, achieve the vision that the city has created. We're looking for a team that provides equitable development benefits related to affordable housing, related to a diverse team, including minority business enterprises and emerging small businesses throughout the development project, creating new employment, serving as a catalyst for the economic development of the area, increasing tourism, creating new open space throughout the site, incorporating sustainability and resiliency features, and creating meaningful employment opportunities available to local residents through workforce training and the creation of sustainable and well-paying jobs. And then finally, we need a team who really understands the project and has a sound financial approach, making sure that they understand the city's goals that I mentioned, that they kind of have a really good feel of the market and have an understanding of the right mix of uses that should be on the site, incorporating those public spaces on site, showing financing that minimizes the public sector risk and maximizes private investment. So those are kind of the evaluation criteria that the evaluation panel has been using for and will continue to use through the process. So that was all the request for interest, which was due February 15th rather, and we asked for qualifications, past experience, and vision and financing. As I mentioned, we had 15 responses. These are the 15 teams that responded from all over the country to that request for interest. And then we invited 6 teams, 6 of those 15, to respond to a request for additional information, which was due April 25th. That request for information asked for the project team, kind of an update on their project team, a longer project narrative, a design submission that outlined kind of each team's approach to the site and their approach to financing and their development program. So on May 10th, After reviewing all the 6 submissions, the evaluation panel selected 3 to move forward. And those 3 were Richmond Community Development Partners. You can see, as I mentioned before, everyone has the ballpark in the left corner here. RVA Diamond Partners, again, ballpark. And Vision 300. These one-pagers are available on our website if you want to look at them closer. So those 3 were issued on June 3rd, a request for offers, asking for any additions to their team since their last submission, development plans, a program summary. And that's kind of, in real estate world, program means, you know, how much of it is retail, residential, office, hotel, et cetera. And like how many units, how many square feet. A statement and kind of outlining their ability to their readiness for completing the baseball stadium by opening day 2025. A lot of details on financing. The request for offers, as well as the other documents, are available on our website, so you can read this yourself. Part of it is they have to fill out an extensive Excel spreadsheet, and that's available on our site too, so you can see kind of the template that we've sent to the teams. So we're looking for a significant amount of financial information, and then an outline of the community benefits it will be providing. So that's the process we've been undertaking to try and find our partner to help create the vision for the Diamond District. One thing to say that I forgot to mention earlier is that the city needs a development partner to do this work, to create that vision. The city owns all of that land, but we are not developers, and we need a private sector development team to create the housing, office, hotel, open space, ballpark that we envisioned in that Greater Scotts Addition small area plan. And so what we are doing is finding someone to help be our partner in this process. And so I want to give a little bit of an overview on public-private partnerships and what makes them work. And so I'm referencing this document right here, Successful Public-Private Partnerships, which was published by the Urban Land Institute in 2016. And a little background on the Urban Land Institute. ULI is the oldest and largest network of cross-disciplinary real estate and land use experts in the world. ULI's mission priorities are decarbonizing the real estate sector and accelerating our progress to net zero, educating the next generation of diverse real estate leaders, and increasing housing attainability in communities around the world. So they're kind of an industry group that includes architects, developers, planners, anyone like banks, anyone who's interested in the development of cities and urban areas. So they're a very good resource, and this report is available on our website, so anyone can go ahead and read it. But as we think about public-private partnerships, they are creative alliances formed between a government entity and private developers to achieve a common purpose. And there's really 3 things that P3s are used for. They're used in facilitating the development of a real estate asset to achieve greater benefits for both the public and private sectors. So in this case, it's those 67 acres. We've set kind of these goals, benefits that the public sector wants, and so we need help redeveloping that real estate. The second is developing an insurance maintenance of critical infrastructure. So in this case, it'll be creating those new roads and the ballpark. The ballpark really falls into the third goal, which is to design, build, operate, and maintain public facilities, all in the service of the goal of building sustainable, healthy, and resilient communities. So the ballpark, once it's constructed, it will be owned by a public entity. It will be the Flying Squirrels would be one of the main tenants. VCU Baseball will also be a tenant, but it will also be a facility open for, it'll be a public facility available for use by many other partners and people in the community. We want to see it used at least 250 days a year. So the way that P3s work is that we think about these 4 conditions, and this is like but for, like the development would not happen but for the public partnership in the development. So one of them is that we want in order to have a successful P3, you have to meet all 4 of these. So the project will contribute to public policy goals. I stated before all of the goals that the city has created. So we'll be looking for a project that meets our public policy goals. That the project will be economically feasible and has a reasonable chance of success if the assistance is provided. So we want to select a development team. We want to develop a project that we think is economically feasible. We're not going to pick something that is, at the edge of feasibility, because that's very risky. We wouldn't want a developer to propose something that is so kind of like teetering at the edge of feasibility that they're putting themselves at great risk to do it. We want to make sure that the risk is like the right level for the public sector and the private sector, so that we make sure that we get a project done. The third kind of thing to think about is that if the assistance was not provided, the project would not be able to proceed, or it wouldn't be able to proceed and achieve the goals that have been established. So we established all those goals about affordable housing, green space, minority business inclusion, creating the ballpark, all of these things. And so basically, if we want to meet all those goals and redevelop this site, the public assistance needs to be provided. And that the project will pay for itself through revenue it generates, or is of such importance that tapping other funds is justified by the broader benefits the project's providing. So these are really detailed and more expansively in that report, which you can download yourself on our website. And as we move into the next phase of negotiating with these developers, we're really thinking about kind of these 6 principles. And so we want to make sure that we're making deals that are based off of like the real estate market and not just wishful thinking. So we want to make sure that it's valid based on real estate economics, what the markets will actually support, and like on carefully analyzed competitive positioning, not just like we wish that this would happen. So that's something we have hold front of mind. A second is that we need to find a development partner that we trust as a city and that has strong ownership. So like that's looking at who's involved in the partnership is very critical to selecting a partner. We need to really kind of work very closely with that development partner for many years to achieve the vision of the Diamond District. So we want to make sure we find a partner that the city can work for many years in a very trusting relationship. We want to be competent. So we're spending a lot of time. I put the evaluation panel members and the advisory members who are also helping the evaluation panel. We all are working very persistently to review and develop this deal, and we are working very hard and pulling an expertise when we need it to build a really good deal for the city of Richmond. And we also want on the other side of the table with the development team we select to have people who are very competent at what they do. This whole process and the creation of the solicitation process is part of the negotiation strategy. So like we're using this process to help problem solve. And so there's part of this, like one of the things that we kind of have to balance is this public need for transparency and the private need to protect proprietary information. So there's part of this like desire for public to know a lot about the details of the proposals, but then there's also the fact that the private sector is putting a lot of proprietary information into that will put them kind of at a disadvantage and will kind of compromise the whole competitive nature of this project if everyone sees everything. So this is a big negotiation to get the best deal for the city, and through that we can work through lots of different challenges that the deal might present itself. We want to make sure that the deal is fair for both parties. We don't want anyone to feel, we don't want the city and we don't want the development team to feel like they got the short end of the stick. It has to be very much a cooperation, that we're coming into this together, and that we each are getting a reasonable amount of return for the level of risk that we are putting on the table. And then we both need to understand and explain the public risks and the financing. So that will be part of the next steps, is just really explaining to the public, what the financing is, and why this deal is worthy of a public-private partnership. As we think about the deal, with a project, there's this fundamental timing, right? So you build a project, and then that's year one. And year two, it starts to generate revenue, and then year three is when you start to really collect taxes on it. So most of the one way, and I'll kind of go into other ways too, one ways that this project could be paid for, or parts of it could be paid for, is through tax increment financing. And part of the city needs to help provide some public gap financing early on, to deal, because the tax revenues to help pay down the bonds won't be coming in until a little bit later. And so this is kind of a fundamental timing problem. You can go into more details on the website in this report about how this, into the details of how this is explained. But basically, the public sector's risk is mitigated by limiting its pledge of support to revenues linked to the project's benefits and provided when the project delivers the promised gains for the jurisdiction. And so we need to structure a deal that achieves a balance between the private sector's need for early capital and the public sector's need to limit risk. So some of the typical financing tools that public localities use to help in public-private financings to help fill gaps and minimize the private sector's risk are tax increment financing, which is, let's say right now the property tax that's collected on the site, let's say it's $0 because it's all publicly owned, so we collect $0 of tax revenue. Let's say after the project's built, we're collecting $100 of tax revenue. It's saying that a portion, so let's say $45 of that 100, are earmarked to pay down debt. And so the debt, so you take out a loan from the bond markets to help you build infrastructure, the ballpark, and roads. And the bond market is lending you that money because they know, they have enough confidence that you're going to generate a lot of tax revenue in the future after the project is done. So they're lending you that money. And so you say, the public sector, and through the potentially a community benefit development authority rather, you say, okay, well, we're going to earmark a certain portion of the tax revenue that is increased. So a portion of the $100, not all of the $100, a portion, say $45, to pay down the debt. Now, the bond market would never want to see that you're putting all of your projected revenue to pay the debt, because that's sort of like if you're going to go buy a house, the bank will not lend you money to buy a house that you have to use your entire paycheck to pay the mortgage. That's not a sound financial deal for the bank, because they know that you probably won't be able to do that because you have other expenses beyond your home expenses. Similarly, a bond market won't want to issue debt to pay for infrastructure if you're using all of the revenue to cover that debt. They'd only want a portion of it. A payment in lieu of taxes is another method where you give a payment instead of taxes, and sometimes those payments are maybe a little bit less than what it would have been. So it's just another tool, another type of tool. Improvement districts is like a community development authority where that area is levied a small tax that helps pay for improvements in that area. So that might be like 5 cents for every $100 of value or something like that, that could pay for maintaining parks or other features within the area. Tax abatements means that you pay lower taxes. Land banks is another tool. And then there's other tools that the development teams may be using that are not controlled by municipality, like new market tax credits, the Immigrant Investor Program, EB5, low-income housing tax credits, opportunity funding, on and on and on. And so there's a lot of different tools that can be utilized to make this project happen. But the main thing you need to remember as you think about this is that we, the city, are wanting to make sure that we enter a deal that minimizes the public sector's risk as much as possible and maximizes private sector investment. So as you all have questions or comments, please feel free to reach out to the city. The best way to give us comments is through our website. So if you go to rva.gov/economic-development/diamond, there is a form here, and we would invite you please to use this form for comments and questions, because we ask you please to not email all of the evaluation panel's members at once, because when you do that, it clogs people's emails, and we don't always know if you've emailed everyone, and then it gets very confusing to figure out if we've gotten all of the questions and comments. So please, please, please use this form and provide your comments and questions here. We are reading these every other week. So thank you very much for tuning in to this video. If you have any questions, please enter them in that form at rva.gov/economic-development/diamond.